Hello, welcome to the third Arqus lecture, Landscape and Heritage, the Siege of the Alhambra for Speculation and Tourism by Juan Manuel Barrios from Granada. The lecture is part of the Arqus Quest lecture series, Critical Heritage Studies at Arqus, Concepts, Approaches and Findings. My name is Michael Scholz-Hensel. I am a researcher, Institute of History of Art at the University of Leipzig, specialized in Spanish art. It's my pleasure to introduce now the speaker of our lecture today and to awake your interest for his deep view on a main example of problematic heritage in Spain. Juan Manuel Barrios is professor titular at the University of Granada. He is doctor in history of art and have a similar focus as his conference today. Consecuencias urbanísticas y arquitectónicas de las desamortizaciones en Granada de 1998. Since 1999, Juan Manuel Barrios is teaching at the Escuela Técnica Superior de Arquitectura of Granada. He has written a lot of books and articles about Granada and especially about the Alhambra. I would like to mention a book, Alhambra Romántica, Los Comienzos de la Restauración Arquitectónica en España, from 2016. In his recent articles, he again treated two central figures of the history of the Red Castle: the famous American writer Washington Irving and the intellectual architect and restorer Leopoldo Torres, key figure for the understanding of the actual debate about the Alhambra. In his conference today, Barrios will analyze the history of the Alhambra after the capitulation of the Moors at 1492 and problematize its conservation and restoration. Within his presentation, we will see a lot of historic pictures which normally not are available. After the conference, will be time for questions and debate.
Thank you very much, Michael. I would like to thank Arqus for giving me the opportunity to participate in this interesting series of lectures. I will talk about Spain's most original and famous monument and one of its most visited. Its complexity has turned it into a laboratory of the problems facing heritage sites. I have published a monographic book on the Alhambra and two others in which I investigate some of the issues I'm going to discuss today. My research formed part of a vast collection of publications of the monument carried out by both Spanish and foreign research. The wealth generated by tourism is an essential source of funding for the costly conservation of a historical and artistic monument. However, mass tourism also poses a significant risk to historical sites. The dilemmas arising from this complex relationship are now a central concern in debates on heritage. The Alhambra has been a pioneering field of experimentation. This fortified palace city has never suffered a military siege, but from the second half of the 19th century to the present day, the Alhambra has been the victim of a siege. The siege has been carried out by hotel industry eager to exploit the possibilities of a monument that attracted more and more tourists. A local government moved by diverse interests and by people in love with the marvelous views. Some attacks have been rejected, but the repeated incursions have been taking away land that will probably never be returned to agriculture and nature. The offensive not only doesn't stop, but threatens to escalate. The old-time city of the Alhambra sits on a hill that, like a chip of 740 meters in length, laying its bow towards the city. To the north, a wooded hillside falls into a deep valley carved by the Darro River, which separates it from the Albertine neighborhood. The forest, used as a royal hunting ground until the 17th century and later as a wood reserve, was never invaded by houses. The Darro River is the place meandering through a steep valley with orchard and forest that come into contact with the city without any surface. The south To the south, a ravine separated the Alhambra from the hills of the Mourot and the Martires. The ravine was occupied from the second half of the 16th century by some paths embellished by fountains and crosses. The narrow paths of the avenues were transformed during the 19th century into wide walks with roundabouts and benches. On the other hand, the hills bordering the citadel form a long ledge that extended from the Bermejas towers to the Martyrs convent, enjoying of wide view towards the city, the fertile plain and Sierra Nevada mountains. In the mid-19th century, the convent was demolished and replaced by the house of a rich banker, who planted extensive garden in what had been orchard, something that didn't substantially alter the configuration of the place. On the northeastern side of the Alhambra, a narrow ravine separates the citadel from the steep orchard of a palace of Muslim origin, the Generalife. Above this palace are the preserved foundations of the castle of Santa Elena, located in the slope of Cerro del Sol, an extensive hill where interesting archaeological remains are scattered. The wake of that ship, that is the Alhambra, extends towards the southwest as a wide ascending plateau that culminated in the Alijares, a privileged viewpoint towards the valley of the river Genil and Sierra Nevada, in which, in Muslim times, there was a palace. In 1805, a cemetery for the city was placed in that area in order to replace the small intramural cemeteries of the palace. The extensive area between the Alhambra and the necropolis was occupied by rain-fed crops. Other interesting archaeological ruins can be visited in the hills near the Alhambra. Most of these ruins are related to the transport of water through canals that storage in water tanks, in Spanish aljibes and albercas, given that these hills were very dry. Sorry. The wide perimeter that we have just described was enclosed by wooden palisades by the Napoleonic troops between 1810 and 1812. No army came to besiege the place, which remained as a rustic and agricultural territory with the exception already noted. Unfortunately, Marshal Soult ordered the destruction of the southern walls of the Alhambra when Napoleon's army withdrew from the city. It was the greatest catastrophe suffered by the Alhambra in its history. What remained was a ruin that Romantic travelers found very evocative. Romanticism and Orientalism formed one of the landmarks in Granada. It wasn't only the Alhambra that deserved the highest praise. The landscape, full of contrast with the fertile plains, rocky mountains, and snow-capped peaks, also deserved praise. Even before the Napoleonic invasion, the city has been visited by some Grand Tour travelers such as René de Chateaubriand and Alexandre Lamothe. But it was especially after 1825 that the number of travelers increased rapidly. Prestigious writers such as Washington Irving, Richard Ford, and Théophile Gautier stayed in Granada for weeks and even months, and wrote books recounting their experiences. Painters also visited the city and produced evocative engravings. From 1846 onward, some travelers also carried photographic equipment. Images of the Alhambra spread throughout the Western world, and were a source of inspiration for many Orientalist buildings from Russia and Poland to the United States and Argentina. Alongside cultural tourists who respected the monument, there were also frivolous individuals and looters from tore decoration from the walls. Gustave Doré drew some Englishmen stealing tiles. However, travelers' interest in the Alhambra was mainly positive. The complaints made by many travelers about the state of deterioration of the Alhambra, which they saw as close to ruin, prompted the authorities to invest money in its conservation. From 1840 onwards, the Alhambra had architects and craftsmen permanently employed for restoration work. These work were conservation projects, while others sought to restore the splendor of the past, sometimes resulting in creative excesses. In any case, the survival of the Alhambra was assured. In 1870, the Alhambra was declared a national monument. A year before, the surrounding of the Alhambra ceased to be under the jurisdiction of the state and many lands began to be sold to individuals. In 1874, the first trains from Madrid, Málaga and Seville arrived in Granada. This put an end to the slow itineraries of romantic travelers. The number of travelers increased while the number of traditional inhabitants of the Alhambra, who had been soldiers, artisans and farmers, decreased. While 400 people lived in the Alhambra in 1824, by 1880 that population had been reduced by half. There were more and more guides There were more and more guides accompanying travelers, souvenir shops, and hotels. A guest house was built inside the Alhambra, disrupting the atmosphere on its main street. Opposite the Ciruelos Gate, two hotels competed to attract travelers, expanding their facilities and blocking the view of part of the citadel. The modern tourism can be said to be born in the 1890s, as can be seen in a local newspaper that echoes the arrival of large groups of American tourists. They arrived by steamship in Malaga and traveled by train to Granada, to spend 3 days during which they visited the Alhambra, the cathedral, and the monastery of La Cartuja. That is why they proposed to first project to communicate the Alhambra with the center via tram, which finally came to fruition in 1907. Just where the tram line ended, the Orientalist Alhambra Palace Hotel opened 3 years later, a huge building that eclipsed the Alhambra on the south side. Other hotels and tourist-oriented buildings opened to the public that same year. On the northern slope of the hill, the Alhambra Forest Hotel opened. The humidity of the place led people to nickname it the Rheumatism Hotel. It was a failure, and a few years after its inauguration, it became a tenement house. The building, with its French steel facade, doesn't fit in well with its surroundings. A moment. A few meters away from the Hotel of City Council gave permission to build the spectacular Carmen de Rodriguez Acosta, a house owned by a painter son of a powerful family of painters. Fortunately, although the house was out of scale, its articulation and successful design made it a relevant work of Spanish architecture of the time, halfway between a late Romanticism and a formal rationalism. The construction of the Alhambra Palace Hotel and the Carmen de Rodriguez de Costa opened the door for the entire village to be gradually occupied by houses, and the passerby lost the beautiful views. Between 1923 and 1936, the Alhambra was in the hands of the best restorers. Leopoldo Torres Balbás, very sensitive to the picturesque values of the monument. Under the direction of this architect, the expropriation of buildings linked to tourism that were damaging the monumental complex began. These buildings were demolished. The demolition of the Siete Suelos Hotel, which uh, concealed part of the wall, was very important. This demonstrated that it was possible to prevent and reverse poorly planned touristification. These measures to protect the monument were extremely valuable, because tourism was growing rapidly during those years. In 1921, the Alhambra was visited by 22,000 people, and in 1929 by 47,000. It would take many years to match that figure. It was the year in which Spain hosted the Barcelona International Exposition and the Ibero-American Exposition in Seville. Tourism was already a mass phenomenon. Countries competed with each other to attract visitors and develop base hospitality industries. Inside the Alhambra, Torres Balbás restored the old convent of San Francisco to create a residence for landscape painters. That's how he saved a building that was close to the ruin. The money raised from ticket sales to the Alhambra allowed Torres Balbás to carry out many high-quality restoration, archaeological excavation, and the planting of gardens in the ruins. He was also able to install floor and ceiling in the unfinished palace of Charles V. In one of his halls, he set up the Alhambra Museum. On Cerro del Sol, which overlooks the citadel, he excavated the ruins of the Dar al-Arusa palace. The money from tourism also allowed him to purchase and restore Arab monuments in the city for the state. Thus, tourism, channeled by the wisdom of Torres Balbás, had very positive effects on the historical and artistic heritage of Granada. This golden age for the Alhambra ended with the coup d'état of 1956, which led to the Spanish Civil War. Leopoldo Torres Balbás was dismissed because of his liberal ideas. Worse fate had the writer Federico García Lorca, the author of this law. After the Civil War, the city suffered a long post-war period in which tourism sank as a result of World War II. This led to the regrettable decision to abolish the tram to the Alhambra. What should have been a temporary decision was adopted as a definitive cancellation, and the Alhambra lost a splendid means of connection with the city, of little landscape impact. In 1945, the trust that managed the Alhambra decided to convert the residence of landscape painters located in the heart of the Alhambra into a hotel. A building that housed a maximum of 10 painters was renovated to accommodate a large number of tourists. In 1973, it was expanded at the cost of destroying archaeological remains that had not even been studied. Europe's strong economic growth in the 1950s led to a revival of tourism in the Alhambra. Many tourists came from the Costa del Sol, which was beginning to become fashionable. The authorities in Granada believed that in order to attract more tourists, the Alhambra made it more attractive. Thus began the creation of a cultural acropolis aimed toward tourists, but which neglected the city's inhabitants. The architect of the Alhambra was Francisco Prieto Moreno, a person with excellent relations with the dictator Francisco Franco. This allowed him to accumulate great power, which made him increasingly reckless in his decisions. This architect shared the view of some economists that Spain could join in Europe's rapid growth through tourism and construction. This would be the path that the dictatorship took due to the failure of autarky, which has been the isolationist economic model since the Civil War. To attract more tourism to the surrounding of the Alhambra, a music and dance festival was created. Francisco Prieto Moreno built an open-air theatre in 1954 and, for the entertainment of the spectators, he built gardens. All this intervention was made at the cost of suppressing a medieval orchard of the Generality. The orientation towards the tourism of the theatre was made very clear by Prieto Moreno himself. The enclosure of our first monument needs a place to adequately attend to Spanish and foreign visitors, united by the common condition of tourists, and to hold festival of refined artistic quality, to which the atmosphere of the Alhambra provides a unique setting. In 1975, the Manuel de Falla Auditorium was built next to Los Mártires promenade, a concert hall that sought proximity to the Alhambra and the house museum of the composer Manuel de Falla. That is, it was full of tourists first than citizens, reason why it is an auditorium of very uncomfortable access that mobilizes a lot of transport whenever there is a concert. The commitment to install the attraction for tourism in the surrounding of the Alhambra made another qualitative leap with the decision of the reckless architect Francisco Prieto Moreno to build Fur Museum close to the Generality. This project would move away more than ever the museum from the citizens of Granada, but would put them within the reach of tourists who would arrive by car and bus. The buildings were erected between 1973 and 1979. Fortunately, they were never used for this purpose, being used as restoration workshops, warehouses, archives, and libraries. In 1957, Francisco Prieto Moreno, faced with the problem of an increasing circulation of private vehicles, considered the possibility of dismantling and reconstructing the Granada's gate in another place because it obstructed the passage of the tourist buses. It didn't come to this, but a far-reaching decision was made to locate a car park next to the Generalife on a plot that until then had been an olive grove. From this car park, the historic doors of the Alhambra were far away, and Prieto Moreno built a bridge that jumped over the wall, an urban nonsense that is still in operation and that leads to the majority of tourists accessing the citadel from a higher level than this one. Moreover, this access has a consequence that a good part of tourists don't even perceive that the Alhambra and the Generalife are different things. The influx of tourists attracted hoteliers. In 1969, just 15 meters from the box offices of the Alhambra, the Guadalupe Hotel was built. But the great scandal of the time was the cession to a hotel company of the house called Carmen de los Mártires, a municipal property with large gardens, to build a hotel. The operation, openly prevaricating, raised a huge controversy in the city and was paralyzed by the bankruptcy of the developer company when it had already made a serious destruction in the building and its gardens. No less surprising is that the Alhambra Trust decided to rebuild in 1966 the castle of Santa Elena, a Muslim fortress located above the Alhambra, of which only archaeological remains were left. The new castle was intended to be used as a restaurant. The possibility of connecting it to the hill of San Miguel Alto by cable car was also considered. Fortunately, neither the restaurant nor the cable car were made, but there was an unfinished reconstruction of the castle that abandoned collapsed 30 years later. The last 20 years of Franco dictatorship have been characterized by an economic focus on development, Construction and tourism have been two fundamental pillars of this policy. The construction speed, which was freed almost from any administrative constraints, and that, without taking into account the social interest, the atmosphere of the historic cities, and the landscape values, developed in a brutal way. Tourism was primarily focused on sand and beach activities, and historical heritage was a complement to that type of tourism. This dynamic led to a contradiction: most historic cities suffered serious damage that weakened their future growth in tourism. The Alhambra was well preserved, but Granada was badly damaged by speculation. Architect Aldo Rossi stated, "The old town of Granada, except for the albayzín, has virtually no solution." Democracy arrived in Spain in 1978 with a sector of public opinion critical of the landscape damage caused by the developmentalism, but with a majority of society educated in political passivity and seduced by the wealth generated by the construction activity. For this reason, real estate speculation has been very important during democracy, although mitigated. Mass tourism also continued to grow, with institutional support more concerned with quantity than quality. In 1982, the Alijares Hotel was inaugurated a few dozen meters from the Alhambra. Its large surface area included nearly 200 rooms, a swimming pool, and other facilities. This unfortunate project was possible because, surprisingly, the dictatorial authorities had not included his estate within the protected perimeter of the Alhambra. It is clear that this omission was intentional and favored certain owners in the area. That the Alhambra ran the risk of being completed was made clear when the developer Ávila Rojas announced the imminent construction of 250 single-family homes just a few dozen meters from the Alhambra and the Generalife. The urbanization Los Alijares was to be built on a large estate that, suspiciously, had not been included in the protected perimeter of the monument, and had all the legal permits. But circumstances were changing. In 1984, UNESCO declared the Alhambra and the Generalife a World Heritage Site. This meant that greater care had to be taken with the surrounding of the monumental complex. Furthermore, in 1985, management of the Alhambra was transferred to a new institution, the Regional Government of Andalusia. Forced by public scandal, the regional government halted the construction of houses and bought the estate for twice what it had cost the developer. This plot of land, acquired at such high price, was destined to build a huge car park inaugurated in 1996, which was consisted of concrete, water channel, and pergolas. This car park was accessible via a new road built on the hillside leading down to the Genil River. On the other hand, in 2004, the theatre of the Generalife was reconstructed and expanded, an intervention that would be criticized by e-commerce. While the institution did everything possible to facilitate mass tourism, the hoteliers struggled to approach the monument. UNESCO had indicated to the Spanish authorities that the construction of hotels in the vicinity of the Alhambra shouldn't be permitted, it citing the aforementioned Alijares Hotel as an example. This didn't prevent the hotel from being modernized in 2004. In the same way, the Washington Irving Hotel has been the object of an extension concluded in 2016. Recently, an expansion of the Alhambra Palace Hotel was approved, which would mean the urbanization of a property until then drastic. In 1992, the local press boasted that the Alhambra was the most visited monument in Europe, which was doubtful but indicative of the exponential growth in tourist numbers. That year, Spain hosted the Barcelona Olympics and the Seville International Exhibition, creating circumstances similar to those of 1929. The following year, it became necessary to computerize ticket sales and assign each visitor an entry time to the palaces. However, this wasn't enough, and the number of tickets sold on certain dates had to be reduced, which didn't please hoteliers who, without any consideration for the conservation of the monument, pressed for this limitation to be removed. In 1998, visitors' number reached 2.million. In the luxury palaces, the capacity per tour was set at 400 people every half hour, although in reality up to 1,800 people could accumulate. UNESCO recommended setting the number of visitors at 300. The other monuments in Granada were far from reaching the figures of the Alhambra. The cathedral and the royal chapel were visited by 750,000 people, and the Cartuja monastery by 300,000 people. There were hoteliers who felt that many tourists only visited the Alhambra and didn't come down to the city. The pressure led the city council to consider that communication between the Alhambra and the city should be facilitated by mechanical means of transport such as funicular, cable car, or elevator. The city council launched an international competition to install a funicular railway that would run up the Chinos slope, located between the Alhambra and the Generality. It was a project that would have had a terrible impact on a wonderful and delicate site. The Alhambra Trust managed to halt this project, although these initiatives hadn't prospered at the moment. They reappear periodically because the hotel industry considers that a good part of the Alhambra's visitors don't pass through Granada and don't generate wealth in hotels and restaurants. The long queues that formed at the box offices weren't always rewarded with a ticket, while some rows made money from reselling them. To solve this problem, in 2001, the Alhambra handed over the management of ticket sales to Bilbao Vizcaya Bank. However, this privatization of management led to a corruption scandal. It took the Alhambra Trust several years to uncover this scandal. It was estimated that the plot could have sold some 800,000 fake tickets and caused economic damage of almost €8 million. According to a judicial investigation, the plot involved several employees of the Bilbao Vizcaya Bank, doormen at the Alhambra, several guides, and two travel agency owners. The fake tickets were sold through the aforementioned bank, distributed by agencies and guides, and accepted as valid by the government. In 2005, a study established that the Alhambra was the city's leading industry. The data refuted the idea that most tourists only visited the Alhambra, as 7% of visitors stayed overnight in the city and 27 were day trippers. In 2016, the visitor limit was raised to nearly 3 million people, which clearly meant that the monument was being overexploited. Although more tickets were available, supply still fell short of demand for several months of the year. Ticket reselling was becoming an increasingly serious problem. To prevent this, the Alhambra Trust established a new method whereby one-third of tickets were sold office, a second third were sold online, and another third were allocated to travel agencies. However, the results weren't good. Some tourism companies hired hackers to purchase most of the tickets sold online. All the tickets held by this plot were resold to tourists with the obligation to hire a guide, which considerably increased the price and allowed them to obtain a significant profit. To put an end to this plot, a system of nominative tickets was established in 2017. Now tourists had to identify themselves at the entrance of the Alhambra to verify that the ticket was assigned to their name. This wise decision angered travel agencies and tour guides, who saw their business dwindling. So they began publishing false reports in the press about the supposed ineffectiveness of the method. In 2018, nearly 2.8 million tickets were sold, exceeding the limit set by the Alhambra Trust. The most worrying aspect of this was that the limit was based on an even distribution of visitors across all days, but in practice there were months when capacity wasn't reached, meaning the other months far exceeded it. The COVID crisis caused tourism to collapse in 2020, but recovery was swift, and by the end of 2022 it was announced that the city would soon exceed pre-pandemic figures. There were six five-star hotels in Granada, and plans were in place to build another six. This was just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the increase in tourist accommodation. Lower category hotels, hostels, and tourist apartments were multiplying. Meanwhile, the problem of accommodation in the city for families and students was becoming increasingly serious. In 2011, the Alhambra Trust held a competition to design a large building to welcome tourists. It would be located between the bridge leading to the Citadel and the car park. The building, named Atrium, was to have box offices, restaurants, shops, a conference room, and underground parking. The winning project was designed by architects Álvaro Siza and Juan Domingo Santos. The building, the built area would cover 12,000 square meters and would be located beneath terraces with gardens. The large atrium, covered with walls inspired by the Arab bath, would house shops and cafes, just like in a shopping center. The project generated considerable controversy. Detractors, including institutions such as the City Council, pointed out the unnecessary nature of such a large and costly infrastructure, 45 million euros. Many of the needs that the new construction was intended to meet involved duplicating existing facilities or replacing them. There was no shortage of parking spaces, nor were better box offices necessary, as most tickets were sold online and through agencies. Supporters of the project emphasized its artistic and functional virtues, which would make visiting the monument more comfortable. A highly critical report by Commons was decisive in abandoning the Atrium project. The UNESCO agency's representative was alarmed by the excessive proportion of a project that was too invasive, The extensive earthworks it involved, its proximity to the monumental complex and the creation of gardens where there had never been any before. Icomos pointed out that the promoters of the competition and the project never presented any alternative to this idea of a large atrium next to the monument, which was unnecessary anyway, as the visitor minimum allowed for higher peak attendance. The executive president of ICOMOS Spain, Begoña Bernal, welcomed the suspension of the project and recalled that the file for the inclusion of the Alhambra on the UNESCO list are based against the construction of buildings and car parks in the vicinity of the monument. According to Begoña, the work would have jeopardized the Alhambra's continued inclusion on the World Heritage List, adding, "The Alhambra cannot be improved in any way, and certainly not with a contemporary building." The conservation of the Alhambra doesn't allow for the construction of more buildings and infrastructure in its surroundings. What's more, the current way of getting there by car needs to be rethought. The Alhambra car park is only 300 meters from the monument, at a higher level than the walls. This is the place, and this is the Alhambra. The new building is uh, superior to the palace. The Stone Age megalithic complex, which received more than 1.3 million tourists a year, has its visitor center and car parks almost 2 kilometers from the monument. Most visitors walk there, and some opt for the shuttle bus. At Mont Saint-Michel, which receives 3 million visitors a year, the car park is 2.7 kilometers away. It takes about 40 minutes to walk there and 10 minutes by shuttle bus. The citadel of Carcassonne, which receives between 3 and 4 million tourists a year, has several car parks near the citadel, but all of them are located at a lower elevation. Although the tourist pressure has always been increasing, not everything has been set fast for the defenders of the surrounding of the Alhambra. To the victory that supports to stop the construction of the urbanization Los Alijares or the atrium, we must add other achievements such as the restoration of the Carmen de los Mártires and its extensive garden, which today constitute a magnificent public park at the gate of the Alhambra. The regional government of Andalusia has also successfully completed the acquisition of buildings and private estates that have been incorporated into the protected perimeter. Tourism is an opportunity for heritage, since it provides resources for the restoration of monuments and warns about the economic importance of preserving them. But in turn, it can become a threat when the historic city is seen by the developers as a business opportunity in which everyone fights to their interests without paying attention to the common good. The construction of hotels and restaurants in the vicinity is the most obvious manifestation of that predatory desire. The institution, faced with the difficulty of managing a rapidly growing flow of tourists, set themselves the objective of facilitating the most direct access possible, and made decisions that came soon proved unsatisfactory. An important part of the tourists goes by car to the Alhambra and ignore the city. The alternatives that are proposed to correct this situation are new threats. There are many pressures that insist on facilitating a massive access of tourists by mechanical means that would have a serious impact on the boundaries of a monumental site that owes a good part of its attractiveness to the surrounding landscape. Preserving the environment of the Alhambra is the best tourist investment. The limit of visit inside the palace, but the wonderful views offered by the exterior of the Alhambra have not access to it. Thank you very much. In this last slide, you can see a resume of the situation of the Alhambra and the buildings that surrounding them.
Okay, I can hear. You can hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Juan Manuel, for the interesting talk, and especially for the images who help to understand your argument, like man of the history of art. We saw a caricature. Yes, we saw a caricature, and I wanted to ask you if tourists today are causing damages to the Alhambra decoration. That's a problem today.
Yes, it's a big problem. The number of tourists visiting the delicate palace is excessive. The conservator of the Alhambra have to repair many things every year. There are many wars, but there are always tourists who don't respect the rules, touch the decoration, and even try to graffiti. It's a big problem.
Yeah, okay.
And 800 people at the Alhambra in all moments.
Yeah. I know it's from Pompeii, no? And Pompeii, I mean, they have a lot of problems, and so a lot of houses are closed, and the people cannot go in, afraid that the people will damage the houses in Pompeii. And
yes, in the Alhambra
I ask you, there are parts of the Alhambra they cannot visit because it's too dangerous. They will. Because they will damage the houses there. It's restricted the visit in the Alhambra because they are afraid of the tourists.
There are many places in the Alhambra that is closed, like Pompeii, because they are too many tourists.
Yeah. Okay. And we have seen a lot of car parks and bus parks, and but if I was there in Granada, they told to me that a lot of people are coming from the coast only for some hours, and they are going back. Normally, the tourists are sleeping in Granada and staying there for. They are coming only to see the Alhambra. They're going after.
70% of the tourists sleep at Granada.
Sleep.
Sleep.
Okay.
27 only visit the Alhambra at the day and return to other cities, Malaga, for example.
Okay. And they are going to see other places. We have the cathedral, we have other buildings, important buildings in Granada, or they come over as the Alhambra in Granada.
Granada is a city with a lot of interesting monuments. The cathedral, the monastery, La Cartuja, the Albaicín neighborhood, that is heritage of the humanity by the UNESCO. There are a lot of places, but the Alhambra is the most famous. Yeah. The most famous monument in Spain. Also the Cathedral of Antoni Gaudí in Barcelona, the Sagrada Familia, but they are the two monuments of Spain more visited.
No, I know it from other places where all the people are going to one special place like the Alhambra, and they don't see nothing of the other interest places in the town, and so it's this problem, no, with the car parks and all this to organize the visit of this main building, no? But you say that normally they are going to different places in Granada, and how long they stay, night or
A city that most of visit tourists, most of the tourists stay 2 days. 2 days.
2 days?
The weekend is the perfect city for a weekend.
Okay.
But if you want more in the city, you need a week.
Yeah. Okay. And the tourists are coming from Europe, or they are coming from the whole?
In the past, most of tourists are French, British, German, no? But in the present days, there are a lot of Japanese and Chinese tourists. This
Okay.
number increase faster and faster.
Yeah. And what do you think? What is the interest of these people? What they want to see? Not they want to see only the lions. They want to see more. They want to understand the culture. What do you think? There are people who want to understand the culture or not?
I don't know, but these tourists visit in 2 days Seville, Cordoba, Granada, Malaga. They take photos, but I think that they don't understand well the monuments. It's a tourism that is not good for the monument.
Yeah. But you have there you have special guides, no, who are going with the groups, no, and
Yes.
They know muy bien, they know very good the building, and I think it's better organized than in other places, because they really want to inform the people about the place.
Because they are a limit.
Okay. And the other question is what it means for the development of the town. No, you spoke about the Airbnb, no, this private hotel problem.
Tourism in Granada has grown rapidly in recent years. There is a limit on the number of visitors of the Alhambra. In Granada, there are no limits. The place most affected by tourism is the Albaicin, a Moorish neighborhood declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. There have been protests against tourists in this neighborhood.
And tourists normally are looking for their special restaurants, no, for Starbucks and McDonald's and all this. This influenced the development of the town. I know there was a very nice cafe in the center, which I liked. I think the Café Zürich or something like this in the 80s. But now it's closed, and you think there are changes in the structure of the shops and the restaurants and all this by the tourism.
See, a shop for the people of Granada has disappeared in the center of the city. All the places are for tourists. Cafes, restaurants, fast food, souvenirs, shops, all the center of the city is for tourists. Is the reality.
Okay. If we look to other places in Spain, you mentioned the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, no? There are other places like Altamira, no, Altamira, the
No, Altamira is
Mezquita.
close to the visit. Altamira is
Yeah,
close
it's
to the
close,
visit.
but there has a second Cueva, no, and they have a lot of visits there too, I think, and but there are other places like the Mezquita in Cordoba or Madinat al-Zahra or something. There is cooperation between these places in Spain. The are looking for cooperation with other places in Spain, which have the same problem like Granada with tourism. There are relations between Granada and Barcelona and Granada and Cordoba to resolve the problems with the tourism.
The situation is very different because Sagrada Familia is a big church that is modern, is in construction. It's a building that is not finished. And this building admits millions of tourists without problems. But the Alhambra is very delicate, very delicate. It's a complex building. The decoration are delicate.
Yeah, but in Cordoba, no, with the Mezquita, they have similar problems, I think. There's in Andalusia, no, a possibility to form a cooperation, no, to look together.
But the Mezquita de Cordoba, the owner of the Mezquita de Cordoba is the church. And the church and the civil power are different things. And they are no relation in this question. They are not relationship between church and regional government in the management of this building.
Okay. No, and what do you think? What could be the main changes in your idea to make the situation better for the people in Granada, and on the other side to give the possibility to people who are really interested, to see the Alhambra? What could we do to manage the
For me, there are two main problems in the Alhambra. The first is the number of tourists in the palaces. I think it should be reduced and the ticket price should be increased. The guides and travel agencies don't like this, but they must preserve. But we must preserve the monument. The second problem is the way to access the citadel. The parking lot and the modern bridge destroy the urban logic of the place. Tourists should walk more and enter through the historic gates. This way, they will understand the monument better, and in the future, the queue park nearby can be reduced. For me, are the two main problems in the moment: mass tourism and the car park and the access to the Alhambra.
And how is the situation now? Who is deciding the things? The government of Granada or
the hoteliers?
Okay.
They are a fight. It's a battle. It's a battle. The monument is a battle of interest. The preservation of the monuments is not the priority for the hoteliers. They want more tourists, and all the limits are bad for them.
But the politics and the government in Granada are looking for the inhabitants, or they're looking for the hotel?
Looking for the hoteliers, I think.
Yeah. Good. I'm the last question. I'm very interested in gardens. Yeah, in gardens, and you have the famous Carmenes, no, in Granada.
Granada is the city
normally,
with the marvelous garden of Spain. Is famous for its gardens.
yeah, okay. And you think there are gardens which today exist, and they are in private hands, or they
Yes, they are good gardens in private hands. After
yeah.
all, in the Albaicín neighborhood, but they are
Ah,
protected by the government. The,
okay.
I think that is not a problem in this moment.
Yeah.
Fortunately,
I understood that you say that Albaicín is the last place, no, in Granada,
yes,
where the word is good.
is the neighborhood that have ancient and a picturesque image. The rest
Yeah.
of the
Okay.
city has changed badly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. This would be my questions. I see not in the chat. I see no other questions.
Mhm.
I don't know if we go on or what we are doing. It's now the work of Jose. No, he has to decide what we are
Just a
doing.
moment.
Jose. Ah, yeah, we have chats. Ah, thank you. Okay. Okay.
Say that we can finish.
Yeah, okay. So we say goodbye. Thank you very much. It was very
Goodbye.
interesting. If I come to Granada, I will
You must telephone
look
me. You must
for
telephone
you.
me.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, good luck in Granada. No? Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.